Welcome to the WellCast. The world has a lot to say. We're bringing a biblical perspective to those conversations.
Well, hello, welcome to another episode of the WellCast. I'm Jordan, joined by Melissa.
Yes.
And we are talking today on part 2 of healthy conflict. And if you remember, if you listened to last episode, Mr. Dave Obwald joined us. You got to know him a little bit. If you didn't listen to that one, we would really encourage it. We're probably going to be referential in this one for the last one. So, Dave, welcome back.
Thanks. Love being here.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
And I think a lot of the feedback from the last one was, hey, Jordan, what the heck? Why are you getting in my business?
How'd you know?
Yeah. And so we really felt like, hey, one, we're in a tumultuous year as a country where there's a lot of promoted difference. But then also, you have healthy conflict as an idea, right?
Yeah.
Hits the ground running, and it no longer becomes an idea. Once you start owning it, it is very real.
Yep.
And it is immediately on someone's mind of who they're talking about and all these things, right? We talked a lot about, drawing a circle around yourself, owning your 2% or whatever percentage is in. On the Well staff, we talk about own your lumber, right?
Right.
Which is referential to the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is saying, speck in your own eye, or speck in their eye, log in your own eye. Remember that you need to repent of your sin as you talk to people about theirs. And so all that stuff is great, sort of, as a starting place, a launching place.
Yeah.
But as Melissa and I talked, we felt the need to talk through, hey, well, there is a place in the world where you speak truth. But the Bible is very clear, Ephesians 4, Colossians 4, and talking about like all these things where how you hold yourself as you speak truth.
Yeah.
So how do you do that in love? Right?
Right.
And how we felt like this tied in with conflict because one, that starts very personally, right? Sometimes you need to speak truth to people who are close to you on a whole host of different things.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's someone hurt you or,
You see something in their life.
Yeah, or you see like, hey, this is going on. And you're almost right in that moment, rather than a lot of times you kind of oops your way into conflict. But this is almost like, how do I choose conflict?
Right. Sometimes the conflict comes up, and sometimes now you're walking into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think a little bit we need to define our terms. So the first is like, why would you say speaking truth in love why is it important to speak truth in general today?
Ooh.
That's a great question. I think interpersonally, the first thing that comes to mind is I literally have no ability to see my own self. Like I have to use something to give me feedback on my life. Yeah, I could use a mirror. It's actually not me I'm looking at. It is a reflection of me coming back to me. The best mirrors in my life are other people around me. And I have a tremendous amount of blind spots that, minus getting feedback from others, I just can't see. And if I actually want to grow into Christ likeness, if I'm just in isolation, I don't get those mirrors to be able to do that. So if I'm just walking around and everybody in my life is just like, well, I'm just going to tell Dave everything that he wants to hear, everything that's fine, like I will miss out on so much potential growth. Now, when that comes to other people though, that's harder for me to think about going, well, Jordan, I see some of your blind spots, but I'm like, I really want you to like me, and I really don't want to offend you. And I really want to do this in a way that is caring. So it does bring up stuff when we think about people in our life. We're like, I think this would be the most loving thing to do, to actually enter in and to move towards this and say something here. Man, there's a ton of reasons why in our flesh we wouldn't want to do that. Namely, all of our idols of safety, security, like wanting to look good in front of the other person, comfort. Like it's way outside my comfort zone to come to you and go, hey, Melissa, there's something that, man, can we talk about it?
Yeah.
So
I think, well, first of all, this is interesting because most of the time when we think about this topic, I'd say when a Christian, at least in our circles, talks about speaking truth in love, what would you say they're talking about?
Oh, guns are ready, and I'm coming to blast
How do
you
I
with my
muzzle
truth.
this? How do I
I got
hedge
something to
this,
say,
right? Yeah.
but I love you.
Yeah.
And then they just give it to you.
Yeah. Or you think about like being like sort of a prophetic voice to the world around us, right?
Self-righteous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not struggling with this, but I can see it in your life. And so because I love you, I'm going to tell you that,
Yes. And then so like, I've heard a lot of people be like, well, it's the most loving thing to blow someone up on this because they're wrong.
Yeah.
Blow someone up. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Really?
Sounds loving.
I've never experienced a loving bomb before. Yeah. But I think it's so interesting to start, like if we had concentric circles.
Yeah.
And what you just did was you opened up, I think, even an inner circle that I didn't even consider in preparation for this, is how do we first become a person that is known or has the feeling of I can speak truth to this person in love. And so what do you guys think about that? Right? Like, because it would have to start in your own heart.
Yeah. And
as you become that person, people are more likely to listen to you because they see that character of humility in you, right?
Right.
Oh, 100%. If I'm going to my wife regularly, and Aaron, if you're listening to this, I could grow in this. But if I'm a person that goes to my wife regularly and goes, hey, what is it like to be married to me? Could you please be honest with me right now? I want to grow because love wants to grow.
Oh, man.
And if I was on the regular doing that,
yeah,
and then there was something in her life where I'm like, I think with parenting, or I think with like, hey, that thing you said to me or the in-laws or whatever it is, hey, I'd love to lean into that. Man, if I'm on the regular receiving honest feedback and going, hey, I can't see my blind spots, she's going to be way more receptive than if I'm the guy that gets defensive every time somebody brings something up to me. And then I'm like, hey, but I'm quick to point something out in your life and going, hey, do you see that? Do you see that? You know? And so I think it starts, again, heart posture.
Yeah.
If I'm not willing to receive truth and love, people are probably going to receive that from me very well either.
What do you think, Melissa?
Well, I'm thinking too, the opposite of that is if you're only always telling her all the things, the truth, and never telling her, I see this in you, I love this about you, I wish, I was like that or whatever, then all she's hearing is criticism.
Totally.
Not truth and love.
No.
Yeah.
Because truth and love is not just things I see that are missing. It should be things I see that are awesome.
Yeah.
And it should probably, I've heard it said that if the ratio, especially in interpersonal relationships, if the ratio isn't like 75%, and it's not like, I need to tell you three good things so I can say the one.
I have this thing in the chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's not it. But if my like just natural living with you is not usually 3 times as high of like speaking the truth and the good things I see in your life versus the thing that I could say, hey, do you see this blind spot? Then I'm probably off balance and I'm not going to be hearable.
We were actually trained in that as a former educator, that every kid in your class needed 3 to 1. So every kid needs to hear 3 positive things. And that could be, hey, cool new shoes. It didn't have to be you're sitting quietly or whatever. But kids who really struggled behaviorally needed 10 to 1. And we do the opposite. We see those kids and we're like, this, you're not that. You don't listen, you don't, right? So we were trained to, which trains you to find the good in those kids, in our relationships where.
Ooh, can I piggyback on that? We train ourselves to find the good. We could stop the podcast. Like if we became experts at seeing the good in others, the image of God in others, and like became experts at calling it out, speaking the truth in love becomes a little more easy. Even if someone feels and you're talking about interpersonal, but also the world around us. If we could, 10 to 1 the world around us as well, when we go, hey, there's some things we want to talk about and be able to go, hey, I think this is an area that God actually speaks into or whatever, then I think we'd be the right kind of confusing as Christians. It's like, dude, these guys are awesome and they love me so deeply. Yeah, we have some different convictions and they're actually not afraid to talk about them. But dang, they love me like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What were you talking about to me the other day about like what you sow into things versus, I can't remember your language exactly, but a person that takes rather than a person that sows.
Yeah, this is like fresh in me. So I'm, like this is God's doing, I don't know, he's stirring some things up, right? So Galatians talks about us being people. It's just a natural law in the world, right? We will reap what we sow. Galatians talks about, and it says if we reap to the flesh, we sow to the flesh, we're gonna reap death, destruction, those kind of things. If we sow to the Spirit, we're gonna reap eternal life, like actually things that are abundant and
Fruit of the
living.
Spirit.
Right? Fruit of the Spirit's gonna come out, right? So, in any given moment, I'm probably either going to be sowing flesh or I'm going to be sowing spirit.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been around the well, you understand this language for the last year or so, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right? But I think what the nuance of it is that's hitting me deeply is that, so if, Jesus talks about Sermon on the Mount, if I start judging you, and when I say judgment, we always think, well, I'm just judging a wrong thing you do. No. I can live in a space of judgment about what you look like, about your background. I mean, it's, again, as I interact with the world around me, I can be in a place of judgment constantly around that, right? And that passage says, if the way you judge others, expect that it will be measured back to you in the same way. And so as I judge others in that way, probably what I'm going to be thinking about is, I bet people are judging me in these same ways. And if I sow that into the world, what's going to reap is a harvest of death, probably not good relationships. It's going to be like death-filled relationships in that. So I need to be cautious and thinking about, what am I sowing in? And I'll either be sowing from a place of taking or a place of giving. Now, taking comes from a place of scarcity, meaning, let's just take a marriage relationship, right? If I feel like there's always something missing, we just need to be a little bit better. You just need to be a little bit more, right? Then I'm constantly trying to take love from you. Take what you're not giving me. Give me this. I want belonging. I want love. I want intimacy, all those kind of things, right? And so even my intentions and my stuff is always going to come from this spot of taking, right? And I'm going to be sowing unto death, right? But if I know that I have a place of wholeness in Christ, and I know that God is going, hey, Dave, what you want to see show up in your marriage, sow unto that.
That's good.
Go first with that.
Yeah.
Like, give. And the promise that the Lord gives is it will reap a harvest. But it does say in due time. It's not like immediate, right?
Yeah, I did that for you. Where's
hey, remember
my...
this week I bought you, I brought that coffee for you. Now where's my kiss?
Yeah.
So it is this sense of like constantly we can be going, am I being a giver here? Am I living in abundance here? Am I sowing unto the Spirit, or am I sowing unto the flesh? And that goes for every conversation in that moment. So.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, okay, personality-wise, I'm a bigger personality in most rooms I'm in. And some of that's self-protection, some of that's just, I like to have fun.
Yeah.
And then some of that means that, like, I like to make fun of people. It's one of my love languages. And I also have a lot of opinions. Yeah. And so sometimes I can be perceived. I don't necessarily feel this way, but I can be perceived as someone who is not open to feedback. And it's definitely been true in my marriage, and for good reason at times. Let's talk real quick before we move outside of ourselves. How do we become, last episode we talked about, right? Like, how are you aware of your patterns, who you are, right? Are you a peacemaker, faker, or breaker, right? Like, where do you land on that spectrum? What would you guys say about how we become people who are first open to the truth and love being spoken to us?
This is going to be a silly example, but you've gotten home at the end of the day and realized you had broccoli in your teeth, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I was sitting with Dave and Jordan for 4 hours and they never told me there's broccoli in my teeth.
Yeah.
And I resolved in my heart, I will be the friend that tells you you have broccoli in your teeth. So truth telling you that is loving you, even though I embarrassed you for 10 seconds. I'd rather do that.
I had a pact with my friend in high school about teeth and pimples.
Ooh, yeah, even harder. Like, dude, take care of that,
dude,
right?
you got a big one, man.
So, but in that, so truth is a high value for me. I think that is the deepest way you can love someone. But then that means I've also had my husband tell me, you don't have to point out everything in everybody's life, right? So it's loving. I'll tell you if you have broccoli in your teeth, but like you don't have to also tell me, and you need to get a haircut and you need this and that and that, right? So, then for me, receiving that, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me I had that in my teeth. That would have been, that's more embarrassing to walk around all day long. But if you start going too much, then I'm like, okay, I don't need to know all the things wrong with me here.
So you're saying, just so I understand, you're saying like you hold yourself in a way where you're not hypercritical of other people.
Yeah, well, and that I hope they understand this is for their good. And I've had that go right and wrong.
Yeah.
I've had that go right and wrong. But
well, the hard part for me in that is the word hope.
Yeah.
I think you can hope. But how do you sow in a way that guarantees safety?
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is
when someone approaches you.
My value is I want to be told that stuff too, even though I'm like, I don't know that I want to hear that.
So do you tell people?
I tell people.
Yeah.
Tell me about the broccoli.
I tell people. Oh, well, I kind of just did that to you when you got here. I know there's some stuff in my leadership because I had a truth and love phone call this morning right before this podcast, and I realized, I'm not leading well in that area, and so I invited Dave to, hey, I do want to have that. Yeah. You probably see what my mirror doesn't see. Now, that's not how all conflict goes, though. Somebody walking around going, hey, what truth and love do you have for me today, right? That's already been brought to my attention. So now it's like, oh, can other people speak into that? But I do want to hear that stuff.
I think if I can speak, so I'm married to, Aaron's very different than me. Most people's spouses might be different than them, and even in personal relationships, right? So Aaron tends to be more of a peace breaker. I tend to be more of a peace maker. That's a lot of marriages usually, and even friendships. So I heard this practice a while ago that it's not like, oh, this is a prescriptive you should do, but the elements of it have really been beneficial for us. Because Aaron's a person that might notice more things and be like, hey, broccoli in your teeth, and whereas I'm going to be like, broccoli in your teeth, and then I'll just like in my mind talk about it and probably never maybe say it because I don't want to offend you, right? So this practice was that once a week, it created a space for Aaron to go, I know we're going to have a chance to talk about the stuff like that I see, but it's not going to come at you rapid fire. Like it's not going to be like all the time, right? And that it also gives me a chance to where I know that I have a space that is actually safe where she's wanting feedback to go, hey, is there something here, right? But the whole time starts with where for, 15, 20 minutes, we literally just affirm the things we've seen in one another throughout the week, where we've seen God show up in each other's lives and go, that's the Spirit of God in you. Oh man, I loved when you interact with the kids that way. It's so cool to see you using your gifts that way. So we're like filling the tank to be able to then go, okay, Dave, here's some broccoli I see in your teeth. Can you receive that? And my job is to like go, man, thank you for loving me enough to give me that kind of feedback. Like, and I appreciate that. And can you help me understand more? Like I really want to understand. And then here's the thing, because I am more of a peace faker, I have to literally be willing to say it. Because there's usually a few things. And she's like, so do you actually have anything?
Yeah.
And then I'll couch it as like, I'll talk about like, well, we could probably just grow in this. And she's like, just say it to me. Just say it, but having that space makes it so that she doesn't feel like all the time she needs to bring up stuff.
And is that
for
like
me,
scheduled?
It's like Wednesday nights, kids are at a thing. We've got a little time. It's part of date night. And it's like, it's going to happen. And so it allows us to have this like container for it. So it doesn't spill out all over the place. And it forces me to talk about it. Yeah. And it also kind of holds her back from talking about it all the time.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So these are all great things. One, it needs communication. It needs to be purposeful, right? I think
the other thing is this is in relationship too. So this is an area of speaking truth and love where you are already in relationship.
So thank you for reading my mind, co-host.
Okay.
I think we're talking about the fruit of roots, right? And so, one, the roots in your own heart and the roots in your community. So I would just encourage people, if you genuinely ask yourself whether or not you really want God to create a clean heart in you, whether or not you actually want the humility of Christ and to be gentle and lowly like Jesus. And if you want that, then you need to be willing to have the people of God help reform your heart. And that is a courageous and difficult thing. And then ask yourself whether or not you have relationships in your life where you can value this and do this together.
Yeah.
Because the assumption around what we're talking about right now is you want this.
Yeah.
And you have people who are willing to enter in.
Totally.
Right.
And it starts with us. So if you want to sow this into your relationships, you start with saying, hey, can you give me feedback?
And you might need to do some backtracking.
Totally. And
Yeah.
you do it for a while before going after broccoli and other people's
Yeah,
teeth,
there you
right?
go.
You know,
There
like
you
you
go.
become a person who is living the kind of thing you want to see outside of you
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
I'd say candidly and vulnerably, I'm still living in a lot of the damaged trust I created in my marriage the first 6 months, where we're almost 13 years. But, you know, first impressions are hard to break. And so Jamie lives in this place often where, like, well, you're going to react poorly to this. And I still have to be like, I'm very sorry. Like, please tell me, you know? And I can't live in this frustration of like, well, I haven't been that person for the last 12 and a half years, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I really, you know.
I said sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have to continually understand that there are going to be places that maybe you've damaged trust. And I had to be very clear with her. It may not always feel like I want this. I want this and I need this in my life. I need you to be honest with me. And that's even a hard road that we're on right now. And I feel like she's the faker, I'm the breaker in our relationship. And so I need to continually be the person that, and even when I'm unapproachable and I realize it, I need to say it. Hey, I'm really sorry I reacted that way. Please don't, like, please keep having courage in the way you speak to me.
Yeah.
And so I think,
This takes risk.
yeah,
too,
it's very
because
risky.
even in love, even in community, even in relationship marriage where you know you're for each other, it's still a risky thing to tell someone the truth. And I had this happen in a life group, a gal, I spoke truth in love, and I didn't know at the time, but she hated what I had to say. And years later, I run into her after that group kind of changed and she left the group, never told me it was because of something I had brought up about how she was living. And she said, hey, 5 years later, I did not like hearing that. And I actually stopped coming to the group because of what you told me. But now on the other side, you were right. And what ended up happening, I lived the hard way. Now, that's not because, yay, I'm right.
Yeah.
But I was unaware that I spoke truth in love and it hurt her that deeply. But that years later, that risk may not pay off until you see. I mean, the Lord didn't even have to bring us. We ran into each other.
Right.
And for her to say it was right. And I didn't want to hear it at the time. But 5 years later, now I know. So not all these conversations are going to go, oh, thank you for telling me I have broccoli in my teeth. I love you so much. It could be you put that relationship on the line in the name of truth, in love. And it might get harder for a little bit, you know.
And I'll say, as a recovering peace faker, it's not love to not say something because I am saying something. It's just in my head. And I'm like, I'm creating bitterness. I'm creating resentments. Like, I am saying a lot. Like, it's just not to the person.
Yeah.
It's to myself.
Yeah.
And then I start telling myself a story about it, and it makes blocks in relationship, and it kills intimacy. And like, I'm just not being a person of integrity with it.
Yeah.
And
what was that quote we read this week? There's candor somewhere. Let's hope it's in front of you or something like that. It was in that little
the
book.
conversation's happening somewhere.
It's happening somewhere. The
Yeah.
truth is being told somewhere. Let's hope it's to you
the
and not
actual
behind your
person.
back or whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of that starts with how you carry yourself, who you are, right? So if we're moving outside of ourselves now, right, naturally in the conversation, we've got this idea that, Melissa, you spoke truth to this person. I wasn't there. Hopefully it was in love. And
I mean, I think so, but now I have to reflect on all that, I'm direct though. So sometimes just being direct can feel like immediate confrontation as opposed to like, oh no, you were going to hurt yourself. So I just said, be careful. Don't hurt yourself.
Well, Dave, and I'm interested, you have a lot of sort of coaching experience where, a lot of these things live in the world of, I'm always interested in this tension of, I think I know what's best for you. Do you? And how do we get there? And do I actually know what's best for you? So, like, I in my position as like a supervisor, manager, but then also like not only staff, but then you have volunteers, you have families. A lot of times information gets to me, right? So I have this information here that this person that I probably am charged to pastor and shepherd or even walk in relationship with in some way doesn't know I have the information. So you set up a scenario now where you've said, I am obligated out of love for this person to walk to them and say, what's up with you? How you doing? With information that by their standards you shouldn't have, right? So that's a lot of times when truth and love needs to happen in relationship. It's you have information that they may or may not know that you have that you need to bring to them and say, this seems to be disintegrated with who you tell yourself to be or hold yourself to be, or maybe it's unhealthy for you, and I know that. How do we approach that conversation?
Oh man, Jordan, there's so much there. And yes, we face that a lot, right? So a couple things pop for me. In conflict theory, one of the things that starts to happen is that people go from talking to one another to talking about one another, and then to creating triangles. And anytime triangles happen in conflict, meaning I'm now talking to someone else about someone else, and so that makes a triangle. Triangulate, right? So it always then is more interesting when I come into a conversation with information that you don't know I have, and I'm trying to like tiptoe around how do I actually bring this up in a way that makes not running the other person under the bus that they gave me this information, because that's going to hurt your relationship with this person. Dude, I try to stay as far away from that as possible. So if someone gives me information about someone else, first thing I'm going to do is go, hey, how do I not get in this triangle with you and this person? Have you communicated what you're communicating to me to this person? And you feel like now there's a widening of the circle that needs to happen with me. And and ideally, then it's a widening of the circle rather than me just going alone, because that is going to create a weirdness with this other relationship over here. When possible, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I bring this up, because a lot of times that's why we get the truth, right? Interpersonally, because most people don't know how to have that conversation. So they tell somebody who they think should have the information without doing it.
And that could be a genuine seeking counsel.
Yeah. It is. But it also, and I'm not going to, I don't
could
even
be
know
your
who we're
kids.
talking about, right?
Right.
But what it does is it absolves me from having to deal with it, and now I've put it on you to have to deal with. Like, hey, this is uncomfortable for me. This pushes on all my idols of control, security, safety, like being seen as okay and kind. Hey, Jordan, will you go deal with this for me? Because it needs to get dealt with. Yeah. But you'll deal with it better than I will. And so can you please deal with it? And I think our job a lot of times is going, hey, I'm not actually going to take that from you. How do I help you with the thing you're carrying right now to do the next right thing? And then the coaching actually hopefully starts with that person who brought it to you to go, hey, what does this bring up in you? And what is this pushing on when it comes to security and safety? And what would it look like to address this? And they may go, well, I already have. Great. So then what's the next right step after you have addressed it? And so we're helping coach them in that. But ideally, they're a part of it, because anytime it's devoid of them, it gets just weird.
Yeah. So now we're in this realm of, let's put our seat, everybody who's listening is like, well, I either currently am or have been the person who needs to talk to somebody. So I need to speak this truth. How do I do it in love? And so let's coach them now.
I don't know if we did this yet, but I think maybe before we jump into that,
Okay.
coaching conversation is even we always pit these two against each other.
Yeah.
You lean more truth than you do love, or you lean more love than you do truth. So I think if we haven't already just recognized where we're at,
Like, what's the disposition of the person?
Are you more truth or are you more love? But even when we do that, it's still not loving. When you say, "Oh, you lean more love," so I don't say anything. That's not loving. That's just fearing man. Yeah. So you're here. You're in this place. You need to speak truth and love.
Wait, but since you're the truth person, give the other side of that.
What side?
You give more truth, so then
notice I just brushed over
you're controlling.
It's the bomb thing, right?
Yeah.
It's I'm going to just tell it to you.
Self-righteousness,
and
control.
and it's on you if you take it wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I told you the truth.
So there's definitely sides to both sides of that spectrum.
I was assuming everyone
I was
knew.
going to let you get away with that.
Okay. I was assuming everyone knew
that picking on the peacemakers,
truth
Melissa. Come
side
on.
was ugly. I was assuming everybody knew that, because to me, this is what we see way more blasted on social media.
But a large part of our congregation are probably more truth tellers because of the way that there's the cultural position we hold as a church, right? As we're biblically grounded, we're going to stand for truth in the world around us. But a lot of times that looks like, I don't care how it lands with you, I'm going to speak the truth.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to just acknowledge it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming most are leaning towards that way, and I've blown some people up before.
Yeah, okay.
Or I'm just out there firing off my gun, and then
I mean, they may not know
sorry
that.
you got shot, but
they should know that God cares.
Yes.
That they do that.
Yes.
And that's not the best for them or other people, right?
Right.
So then you'd say identify which thing your personality sort of like leans towards.
And you're not off the hook because, I lean more truth or I lean more love. That's not what this phrase
Explanations ain't
means.
excuses. Right?
Yes, this phrase does not mean, because you're more truth means I'm not going to say it in love because I lean more truth.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is sometimes when we pit them against each other, we put you in a camp now, and then you think that, okay, it's okay if I'm in this camp or this camp. But the phrase is speaking truth in love.
Yeah. Well, who's Jesus, right? We're called to Christ-likeness.
Yeah.
He is full, Mark 1, he is full of grace and truth.
Mm-hmm. Full of it. Not a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
We want to be Christ-like. We need to live that way as well, right?
Yeah.
We need to at least seek it and take the risk to pull towards that third way wherever you're at, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things, again, I'm a huge proponent of the person who's going to speak the truth in love has to do a lot of work ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right? I have to, one of the things, not only that truth and love piece, but I also have to be cautious with the story I've told myself about what's taking place. Because broccoli in the teeth is easy. You have broccoli in your teeth. That's a very obvious thing.
Yeah.
Most of the conflicts we're going to be, or things we're going to see, are more nuanced than that. They're
Actually,
more
it's
complex.
cilantro. I ate a taco.
They're more complex than that, right? And so if I have an event, because we're meaning makers in life, right? An event takes place and we immediately assign a story to what has taken place. And if I don't, as the person going to this other person, hold my story loosely and stay confused, then I know exactly why you did that thing. And I'm already coming with all this energy, and I'm coming with, you did this wrong. I know why you're doing that. I know why you're entering into that relationship. I know why you're doing that thing that's causing you to walk away from Christ, when probably we actually don't. We just see something that feels like the Lord's going, that the Spirit's going, hey, love him enough to enter in. And so that's that whole, am I willing to go confused? And let's just say that is deeply hard to do.
Yeah.
Deeply hard to do. And then in that posture of going confused.
Well, we talked last episode about help me understand.
Yeah, and to go in with a help me understand attitude, whereas hey, I want to have a conversation about this, but I also want to assume I don't have all the information.
Yeah.
And will you help? Or one, are you open to it? That's actually asking permission.
Yes.
Passport. And if they're not in the moment, would you be willing at some point?
Yeah.
Or else we just literally barge ourselves through the door.
Yeah.
And the person's like, I'm actually not okay to receive that right now.
Well, yeah, you're the SWAT team who's been given a warrant by the judge in your own mind, who's going to storm the house.
Because I'm a truth and love guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Stop it, you guys. This is convicting me now.
So I would also say, I remember one time hearing Paul Tripp, or reading it or hearing it, but I don't know, talk about, you need to examine your motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And if your motivation is not that I want God's best and flourishing for this person,
So good.
then you need to ask why you are talking to them. And until you can get to that place, I would encourage you to not do so.
So good.
Because you still may be hurt by them, but the end result should be reconciliation, and it should be God's best for this person. And so I would just encourage you, examine your motivations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Do I want to be right? Do
Yeah.
I want to? Yeah.
Do I wanna be in
Do I
control?
want to win the argument?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do I
wanna
want to
have
just go back to like where there's no more conflict? So I'm just going to deal with it real fast. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And God's best for yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you're going in order to just crush a person, not create peace in your own heart, that's going to disintegrate who you are. And you're going to feel like you're in pieces.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy, and it's not kingdom-like, it's not Christ-like.
Because that's going back to the idea of taking versus giving,
Mhm.
sowing into discord, sowing into the flesh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is great stuff. We're talking, inner heart of the person going. And then do you have any let's speak to in our sort of final chapter here,
Yeah.
tips for just how do you have that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Like anything on the setting, anything on the posture, anything on what you say ahead of time. I've found that a lot of times, even as like a manager of people, hey, can we, I need to talk to you at this time, person's anxious
Totally.
for all of
For
the
the
gap
week,
up
yeah.
into, and that happens with me, my supervisor, right? Like, or even my wife, we need to talk about this. Oh no, you know? So I don't know, like, is there any way to sort of say, hey, like, I want to approach it this way to do our best to actually have this person hear me?
Yeah.
One of the things, which I said, I'm direct. I don't always pick up on your subtlety, right? But the way that I have experienced this in the most healthy and deep way is people asking me questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're not, have you noticed that, it's more about getting to the heart of something that I'm doing, and the question, the way they ask that, which takes wisdom. But for me, if you just come at me with the bullet truth, then even if it's true, I might push you back, right? Because why are you saying that to me? Versus when you've pulled it out of me now and I'm telling you, oh my goodness, I've been doing that because of this, as I trace it back, that is a way of speaking truth in love, is being able to ask a good question. And you don't have to be somebody's best friend to do that, right? That could be a neighbor who's going through a hard time, and you can see something and ask them a question behind how they're responding to it or something like that. So I think that is where you can get to the truth by entering in love, is asking them to start thinking about those things.
Yeah. No, that's good. I also think, love tries to understand. That's like one of the biggest pieces of what love is. That's what Christ has done for us, what we do for others. And so even asking the people that are close to us, and this helps better with people that are close to us, if I was to ever give you feedback, how would you best want to receive it?
Mm-hmm.
Like people we supervise, people that are in our family, our spouses. Because some people want a long heads up, like actually want to know ahead of time. I want to be able to process a little bit that we're going to have one of these conversations, so I can actually come in a little bit, just like settled down. And then some people actually don't want the runaround. They're like, would you just please tell me? Because I know that if we have this conversation, you start asking me all these questions, I know you actually want to talk to me about something. Just say it. And so, but that's different people, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we know someone enough to know their personality, to know, and they've actually given us feedback on, hey, when you've done it that way, that didn't feel like love. And actually when you did it that way, that felt like more like love. So with our people that are closest to us, we can do that. And then I think too that, I've heard it talked in conflict stuff that we're meant to be hard on the issues and soft on the individual. And so I always think about that when I'm entering in with a person who I don't know, or very well, but I have to address something, right? How am I going to be soft on them? Because it's not we're fighting an issue, a thing that could get in the way. Mm-hmm. And we so easily personalize it. And even when I need to address something, I always make it about them, like meaning like, oh gosh, this is going to hurt them and all that stuff. Well, it's a thing that will hurt them. And how do I keep it about the thing, and not about them as a person? And how do I come in with affirming the relationship? I come in going, I'm doing this because even if I need to say something up or need to bring, I love you. And I'm starting there with relationship and then moving towards the issue, again, can help. And here's the thing. You can't guarantee that the other person is going to respond well to your story earlier. We just don't know, and we can't control that, which is part of the risk anytime we do something like this. We're not going to say, hey, do all these things, and then, man, people are just going to be like, thank you. I really wanted you to point out that thing that's hard in mine.
Yeah. I think the picture I got in my mind is that most of the time when people want to speak truth in love, whether or not it's about an issue, whether or not it's about a belief in someone or an action, they want to be like a mailman, which is like, here's the letter, read the letter, digest it. But really what we need to be is more of a person who sits down and tries to understand, right?
Yeah.
And you're writing the letter as you're understanding them. Yeah. And you have a desire to know, even in beliefs, right? Let's say their beliefs are, this is a good example. Jamie and I were hiking in Monterey, Point Lobos, and it's beautiful, God's majesty. This group of girls comes by, and they're all wearing hats that just say abortion with an exclamation mark.
Wow.
Like celebrating abortion. And I was like, that's offensive to me because I value life, and I think that grieves God's heart. Now, what I could have done in that situation was let him know. And here's all the reasons why. But I mean, really, it's this group of four girls
looking for you to do that.
They're like, yeah, please talk to me about this thing, right? And even no matter how heinous I think it is, my belief is honestly, I think I'll just entrench them if I get in an argument. But what would make a difference is if we were sitting down and I could hold my composure and maybe we're all drinking water by the side of the trail, I'd be like, hey, why are you guys all wearing those hats? And I may be at some point be able to, deliver I hope I would be able to deliver sort of God's truth about life and maybe ask some probing questions and in passing, or let's say my sister walks in the room wearing the same hat. That conversation can be very different.
Right.
But I still need to understand why my sister's doing that, why she has this thing. I mean, it could be that like these people have this experience in their life that like, or maybe they're wealthy and they've made their wealth in the abortion industry, right? I don't know. Maybe there could be 1,000 different explanations
stories
for why these group of women are wearing these hats, but I don't know. And what's my motivation?
Yep.
Right.
Right.
And why do I want to speak the
do
truth?
You just want to be
moment?
right?
Yeah. Or do I want to seek to understand and change and hope that the truth lands in a place of softness and not bounces off a wall of defensiveness, you know? So I would encourage people, seek to understand, but first, if I'm going to summarize what we've got here, seek to understand, be bold in the way you speak truth to people, but be hard on the issue, soft on those people, kind, loving, and then be the type of person, first and foremost, who is humble enough to receive and has the people in their life who will give it to them.
And lastly, rest in the freedom that God is the one who does this work, right? You've said it, but he will be the one to change their mind, their heart, their view, lead to repentance, the kindness of the Lord that leads to repentance.
That's a great point. Be prayerful.
Do this, but it's up to him. It's not up to how nice I said it or eloquently I said it. It's, okay, now, Lord, I was faithful. You're the one already at work. We're invited into this process with him.
I love that. And to piggyback on what Melissa just said, if you read through the Gospels and watch how Jesus did truth and love, fascinating. The people he was most direct with were the people who had the most power and who he knew he could probably speak to in that way. And the people who were hurting and the people who were broken, who also believed different things, right? And who needed a savior just as much as the person who had a ton of power. He met them in their unique way, right? And so he was just a master at entering in truth and love. And so I think we can, again, it's like he's God or something. So we can continue to learn from
Jesus.
our Savior.
That's
No, we
perfect.
can just continue to look for him, not only as our Savior, but our example.
Yes.
And how he entered in and loved people.
Yep.
Yeah. That's good. I feel embarrassed that I didn't even mention the fact that like every time I've ever had one of these conversations, they only go well when they're prayerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean people will agree with me, but it just means that like well in my soul, and in some way there's fruit. So
Sometimes the prayer is no, it's not time to say it yet.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And that's the obedience is, Lord, is this for me to say, or am I seeing this and you want me to pray about this for 3 months and never say a word, right? So back to your point, this is about them flourishing with the Lord and not us being right or winning an argument or a battle. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000 books to be written and read on this, but we hope this is a launching point for people. The whole desire would be that you continue to have healthy relationships and point people to Jesus, right? Matthew 5:16.
Yep.
The point of all these things is so that people would see your Father in heaven and glorify him. And so remember that if we're talking believer to believer, it's a different conversation than the believer in world. And so we're going to talk a lot about believer in world in the next episode.
That's right.
So we hope you guys tune back in. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us, sir.
It's always an honor.
Again, share this with your friends, but not the ones who you need to have the hard conversation with.
Right.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the WellCast. As always, don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about us. For more information about the Well Community Church, visit thewellcommunity.org.